This story is quiet, and that silence is not accidental. After Abraham, you expect movement, you expect reward, you expect the promise to finally take shape in something solid. Instead, Genesis gives you Isaac, and Isaac feels almost invisible. Not because nothing happens around him, but because almost nothing starts with him. Isaac is the first person in Genesis who does not encounter meaning. He inherits it. Abraham heard a call. Isaac is born into the consequences of that call. He opens his eyes and the future is already arranged. A land promised but not owned. A blessing already spoken about him. An expectation that existed before his name. And that difference matters, because a promise you choose can motivate you. A promise you inherit surrounds you. It becomes the air you breathe, so constant that it stops being questioned. Isaac grows up without a dramatic moment of decision. No departure, no rupture, no clear turning point, only continuity. And continuity is heavier than it looks. Life remains unstable, tense instead of walls, movement instead of roots. But instability no longer feels temporary, it feels normal. Isaac does not fight it, he adapts to it. And Genesis shows this adaptation in a subtle way. Isaac does not invent a new path. He repeats his father's. He settles in the same regions, faces the same dangers, responds with the same strategies. At one point, he even tells the same lie his father once told. Not because he lacks integrity, but because inherited stories teach you what survival looks like. When a strategy has already worked once, repeating it feels safer than questioning it. And repetition slowly turns into destiny. Isaac maintains the promise, but he never reshapes it. And that gap matters, because maintaining meaning is not the same as understanding it. When meaning is inherited but not examined, it becomes fragile. The story slows even more here. Years pass, Isaac marries. Still, nothing happens. No children arrive, and once again the promise delays. But now the delay feels different. It is no longer cosmic, it is domestic. Two people waiting inside a future that was already announced to them. Waiting becomes routine, and routine does something dangerous. It numbs urgency. Eventually, children are born. Not one, two, twins. And immediately difference appears. Different bodies, different temperaments, different futures implied in their movements. One feels closer to the land, the other closer to calculation. And preference follows, quietly. One son is favored, the other is tolerated. The promise, once abstract, becomes competitive. This is the moment where meaning turns economic, because inheritance cannot remain equal for long. Sooner or later it has to choose. Isaac becomes the center of this tension, not as a visionary, as a gatekeeper. Who receives the blessing? Who inherits the future? And notice how the language changes. The blessing is no longer about belief, it is about transfer. Something spoken once, something that cannot be taken back. Meaning has become an asset, and assets attract strategy. As Isaac ages, his body weakens, his sight fades, his dependence grows. The man who once carried a promise now depends on others to interpret reality for him. And inside that vulnerability, the entire system becomes exposed. The future of the family is decided in a closed room. A voice imitating another, hands disguised, a familiar smell. There is no divine interruption, no correction, no pause. The blessing passes, and once spoken, it cannot be undone. The promise survives, but clarity does not. Isaac realizes what has happened too late, and yet nothing is reversed, because by now the promise no longer belongs to insight, it belongs to procedure. Say the words, perform the ritual. Transfer the future. The system functions even when the person inside it cannot see clearly. And that is the most unsettling part of Isaac's story. Not deception, but continuity. The promise continues exactly as designed, even when the design allows manipulation. Isaac does not collapse the story, he stabilizes it. And stability carries distortions forward. From this point on, Genesis will no longer be about receiving meaning. It will be about competing for it, managing it, surviving inside it. Isaac's legacy is not faith, it is transmission. Meaning passed down without renegotiation. And transmission without reflection creates conflict, which is exactly what comes next. The story moves on to Jacob, not as a new beginning, but as a consequence. The consequence of a promise inherited before it was fully understood. Genesis does not explain how to avoid this. It does something more disturbing. It shows how easily meaning becomes property, and how, once that happens, the question is no longer whether it is true, but who controls it.